Well, in 1990, I was in London, England, at the Warwick University to take a seminar with Dr. William Harkis. After the seminar, I found myself fascinated with some of the things that he said about oils. And I thought, you know, I'm here in England. I'm just going to go in the history division of the university library and just do a little investigating, reading, snooping. And I came across a little book that a person had written back in the 1800s talking about the story of the 40 Thieves, and it was called The 40 Thieves. And it was most fascinating because as I was reading it, it talked about the 40 thieves, and all we knew and all we'd heard is the 40 thieves, but what we didn't know is these gentlemen were spice traders. And they worked on merchant ships, and they bought spices from the islands, from Sri Lanka, the Reunion Islands, even India, and different locations. And they would bring them by ship to England. And of course, there was a huge spice market and the trading and everything. Well, when the plague broke out, the king issued a moratorium to shut down all ships from sailing for international trade because afraid of spreading the plague. Well, once they shut the ships down and they couldn't sail, the spice traders couldn't make a living. They were out of business. Well, the spice traders at that time had a relatively lucrative job because they could command the price that they wanted. They could set their prices, and they had pretty good markup margins. And when that went down, they had no way of supplying their livelihood. They had some of the nicer homes in England, and they knew they were going to lose, and so they started trying to figure out how they could make a living. And I kind of joke about it a little bit, and I say our spice traders were our first pawn shop brokers. Because what they did is they started looking for things that they could buy and set up in the marketplace and sell to make a living, because they were marketers as well. When the people were dying, homes were vacated. There were bodies laying everywhere. They started getting the idea, well, we could take clothes off the dead people and sell them in the marketplace. We could go into the homes of the dead people and take their pottery, we could take their furniture, we could take their paintings, their tapestries, whatever, and take it into the marketplace and set up and market their wares and goods. And so that's why I say they started the first pawn shop business. But then again, what was interesting is they had no problem walking amongst the dead people and stripping the bodies, going in the homes of the dead people, stripping the merchandise out of the homes that they felt they could remarket and resell. And the police, the constables, were afraid to touch them because they knew they were exposed. They didn't want to arrest them, so they just had free reign of the city and the villages. And finally, the king issued a proclamation to arrest these thieves and bring them to justice. And the constable just says, absolutely, we won't touch them. And the king finally issued a proclamation that if they did not, the constables would be beheaded. And so they would lose their life. They had to bring these men to justice. As the story goes, they finally captured up to 40 of them. And that's where the story of the 40 thieves came from. And they brought them before the king and the magistrate, and the king asked them, and they simply, wouldn't answer him in the beginning. So he told them, he said, either you tell us the story or you die. But how you die will be your choice if you tell the story. So he says, if you don't tell us the story, you'll be burned at the stake. If you tell us your story, then you can choose between hanging or beheaded. So he gave them a choice. But they were going to die regardless. But burning at the stake was not too inviting of an idea. So 4 of the 40 men told the story, that they were spice traders, and they knew that if they washed their bodies every morning before going into the villages and the cities and what we'd call suburbs and looting the homes, that they were protected. So their practice every morning was to go in and shower or wash off, and then they'd rub the spice all over their body. They would go amongst the people. They would come home at night. They'd take all their clothes off. They would wash their clothes in water and scrub them, And so as I read that, I tried to get information, and it was never written that I found. Rosemary was mentioned throughout the text. Clove was mentioned throughout the text. Cinnamon was mentioned throughout the text. But I know the cinnamon oil and clove oil and nutmeg oils are hot oils. They're caustic to the skin. And I thought, if I use those oils, people are not going to be able to put them on because it'll be caustic, it'll burn, it'll irritate. And then I thought, there are other oils that they traded as well. They did not only use spice oils, but they were marketing eucalyptus oils because it was a scent. They were using it in flavoring. They used a lot of citrus oils, and they used it in flavoring. So these oils, even though at that time were rather crude in their distillation process, they marketed them as well as they did the spices. So I sat down and I started looking at a combination of citrus oils and the spice oils and other oils, and that's how I created Thieves.